Listen very carefully and follow my instructions. Prepare your brain for the Cortex Nootropics podcast.
I mean, look, being an entrepreneur, I would not go through the rest of my life without taking nootropics. Aniracetam, Piracetam, Oxiracetam, uridine monophosphate, CDP-choline, modafinil, Noopept, forget it. You can always have a better brain.
The Cortex Nootropics podcast is about to begin.
Welcome to episode number 20 on the Cortex Nootropics podcast. This is going to be a quick one. I want to talk about one of my favorite nootropic stacking strategies, a very simple strategy, one that applies to other racetams as well, and that is the power of racetam, racetam, caffeine, but specifically aniracetam and caffeine. Looking at aniracetam, it's a very stimulatory nootropic. It works on modulating AMPA receptors in a way that gives you a stimulatory response. I mean, there's no question about it. Most folks regard aniracetam as a very stimulatory racetam. When they take it, they get stimulated. Their brains are stimulated, and the type of stimulation that a lot of folks get, that I get when I take aniracetam, is a drive you to action type of stimulation, right? It's a motivating stimulation. It's the kind of stimulation that gets you to want to go and do work. And what I came to notice early on is how well aniracetam stacks with caffeine, and how many different combinations of nootropic chemicals you can put together that have aniracetam and caffeine as their base to make super versatile, super functional nootropic stacks. We're going to get to all that in just a sec, but preliminary stuff out of the way. Number one, we wrote a racetams. We wrote a racetam God Guide. It covers the 8 major racetams: oxiracetam, pramiracetam, phenylpiracetam, piracetam, nephiracetam, coliracetam, falsiracetam, and more, and explains the mechanisms, the dose range, the applicable dose range, other suggestions, protocols, but most importantly, it gets into sublingual dosing strategies for all of the racetams, okay? Breakdown of every single racetam, the major nootropic ones, then sublingual strategies, sublingually dosing those racetams, which is putting the racetam under your tongue, letting it dissolve, and then sublingual dosing stacks, so sublingually dosing a racetam and then stacking it with other things orally while you sublingually dose it. And then the other major part of each sector, which is our word for chapter in this guide, is highly effective stacks for that racetam. It's called the Racetam God Guide. Get it at livecortex.com. It is digital. All right, so you can download it for Kindle, iPad, iPhone, Android tablet, Windows phone or tablet, whatever digital device you have. These days everything is digital, so there's no paperback, nothing. We're probably not going to publish paperback on these on this Racetam Guide. Get it at livecortex.com. Use the coupon code 5, save $5. Price point's $24.99. We also wrote a general but very surgical nootropics general book. It's like all nootropics. It's not just racetams. It's everything. Modafinil, l-theanine protocols, aniracetam microdosing protocols. Every other seemingly obscure but exceptionally powerful racetam nootropic protocol, regular nootropic protocol, everything nootropic protocol. It's called Smarter, Better, Faster. Get that at livecortex.com. That is a nootropics protocol guide. It's got, it lists and lists and lists of powerful nootropic stacks. Again, Smarter, Better, Faster. Get that at livecortex.com. You can use the coupon code 5. That'll apply. And then lastly, we created a nootropic stack, for those of you that don't know, called Cortex. It combines uridine monophosphate with CDP-choline and artichoke extract for a very, very powerful modafinil-like experience. I mean, we figured out that you could combine CDP-choline, uridine monophosphate, that's like a super nootropic, and artichoke extract in very particular doses to create a modafinil-like effect. We formulated a stack with it. It is called Cortex. Get it at livecortex.com. Use the coupon code 5, save $5 off of the product. Okay. In the nootropics sphere, the collective nootropics enthusiast community, one of the things that we have a tendency to do is think more is more, right? And for those of you that have been with me long enough here to listening to the podcast, listen to our YouTube channel, and watching, reading our content on the website, you guys know that ultimately my philosophy is, and what I've come to learn over the years applies to just most folks, is less is more in every applicable area. Less number of ingredients per stack is better if you can make those ingredients work better for you. Less quantity of all of your ingredients in general is generally better if you can learn to make lower quantities of particular ingredients work for you. And those are, there are ways to do that. It's not just like, well, you can take 30 milligrams of modafinil and that doesn't affect you all that well, so you just require 70. There's a way, I firmly believe, because I've done this with so many compounds over time, to get your brain to respond to lower doses by engaging in any number of basically they're all self-optimization strategies. Perhaps figuring out how to hack your sleep in a way so where your deep REM sleep, you don't get interrupted in it. Like, how so many people are walking around America with reflux related diseases, whether there's straight up acid reflux or the other more sinister, I guess depending on how you look at it, form of reflux called laryngopharyngeal reflux, where a bunch of other bile and sort of other contents shoot up to your larynx and close your throat off. Those people don't breathe well in the middle of the night, and so their REM sleep is all jacked up. And if they could figure out how to fix that by targeting whatever's going on in their gut, relating to gut motility or gut bugs, or like a sluggish colon or whatever might be causing, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, whatever might be causing the issue with them, then they end up sleeping better, and then they'll respond to 30 milligrams of modafinil, right? Because literally they engaged in more spindle cycles, they recovered their brain and neurotransmitters more over the course of the time that they were sleeping. Examples like that, right? So but look, there are some people who just might require 1,000 milligrams of like one thing or the other that, other folks require 500 milligrams. And even those folks, I still think we can get down. But the major philosophy and the major operating strategy that I like to get across to people is try to ongoingly figure out a way to use just a little less of each ingredient and a little less quantities together to get the right effect. And alongside that philosophy, the Aniracetam caffeine nootropic combination, it fits perfectly. It's such a minuscule in terms of like ingredient quantities, and then milligram quantities will kind of go in the mid range stack that it's insane. We're talking about two things, and with the addition of the amino acid l-theanine, if you really want to get that extra calm in there, which we're going to talk about on the stack suggestions part of this. So the basic gist of this is that, look, Aniracetam, we talked about on the Cortex Nootropics YouTube channel, where each compound does have its thing that generally it sort of does to everybody. Like racetam specifically, oxyracetam is the laser focused racetam. Coliracetam, is the mental fluidity racetam. Faciracetam is the anxiolytic but functional racetam. Nephiracetam is the sort of baseline background, modest improvement, in all functionality that needs to be cycled. Paramiracetam is the study racetam, right? Well, Aniracetam is the speed of processing. It's the mental, it's the working memory, and it is the mental stimulation. It's like the motivation, drive to action stimulation, racetam. And so it's and that's because it's working on AMPA receptors. Possibly the way that it accelerates the usage of acetylcholine is making it stimulatory. I'm sure it is, but I think largely it's that glutamate modulation, and it's that excitatory glutamate modulation via these AMPA receptors that's really, really, quote, amping it up. It's amping up the effects of the Aniracetam. So that makes it just stimulatory, period. When you bring caffeine into the mix with Aniracetam, and you add, adenosine signaling, the adenosine signaling nature and the wakefulness promoting nature of caffeine, that's where you really get a compounded effective stack, right? Aniracetam and caffeine, talking about somewhere around 700 milligrams of Aniracetam, and 100 to 300 milligrams of caffeine. That's really where a lot of folks are just going to get a solid, from a simple stack, a simple, a minimal stack. They're going to get a lot of stimulatory power. One of the strongest benefits of caffeine is, like, look, if your brain is sluggish and you're attempting to go and do brain work, productive work, you got to write some like checks out to send some bills out, or just tackle a task that's going to require you think. Before coffee, if you're somebody who drinks coffee every day and your brain's sort of, at least in the morning, reliant upon the modulation of the adenosine receptors, like which so many of us are, and I think that's a great thing because that's a great compound, then that first hour or two after you wake up, your motivation to go and work on the thing you need to do in your productive life as an adult is largely non-existent if the brain cannot fire quickly, right? And if you've still got fog from your sleep not going well, or you just sort of woke up a little too early, you woke up abruptly, and so your brain's still halfway asleep, and you need that extra infusion of stimulation in order for you to be motivated to do your thing. Caffeine brings that in. But the combination of the two, of aniracetam and caffeine, really brings a stimulatory, drive to action, speed of processing, and working memory type of brain state that facilitates work a heck of a lot more than each of them individually, and certainly a lot more than just caffeine. One of the best parts about aniracetam is its effect on working memory. Memory I/O, working memory in general, creativity as a result of working memory, and how that affects a person. I always, if I take any of the racetams that really profoundly affect my working memory, like primaracetam or aniracetam, and even oxiracetam, and even colaracetam and paracetam, but mostly aniracetam and oxiracetam, man, I'm motivated just because my memory works better, and I know it does, right? I'm acutely aware that like my mind is retaining more stuff. That sends me a signal that right then and there I can go and work on things that require capacity, and my brain to have capacity to sponge things up and to keep them in my working memory so that I can understand them and I can use them and I can work on stuff. And that's part of the whole motivation in this stack. So you've got the AMPA modulation effects of powerful aniracetam, right? And then so that's very stimulatory. But then you've got aniracetam working on acetylcholine, releasing it more from the hippocampus is what it does. So that's memory centric. So then you got motivation because your memory's working better, and you got just a raw stimulation of the brain via the stimulation of those AMPA receptors. And then you've got the infusion of caffeine with it. So a speed of processing, a dopamine hit via the dopaminergic signaling through adenosine signaling that caffeine engages in. And that entire addition of speed of processing, working memory, good solid a mental drive and stimulation really takes a person from a place where, again, they're in that first hour or two after they woke up, they're not really wanting to be productive, they know their brain has to output, but they don't feel like they have the energy, to a totally different state where you've got all the usable brain energy and capacity you need to approach productive tasks. That's really the utility. I've got some stuff to do. I've got some brain work to do, some administrative stuff to do, some stuff that I know I need to have on the done list today, but my brain is not, I do not have the capacity to do it right now. Okay, the solution in this particular case, and I've done this so many times, is a regular dose of aniracetam, now just getting into the specific dose strategies, and 100 to 300 milligrams of caffeine. Okay, so regular dose of aniracetam is 700 milligrams. 700 milligrams of aniracetam. Okay, that's your base dose for aniracetam, 700 milligrams. Some folks are going to respond a lot less. I know people that can take 300-400 and be fine. I'm one of them. I know people that might need to take 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams of aniracetam. But as a base, 700 milligrams, 700 to 1,000, let's just say. And then 100 to 300 milligrams of caffeine. Look, we could get more refined than that, but that's the basic base strategy of using aniracetam and caffeine to really provide a good stimulatory effect to go and do cerebral work and to be able to get something on the done list done that you really want to get done. But breaking it down a little further, I like to try to concentrate caffeine dosage as much as I can. This way, I'm not drinking a whole lot of liquid. Depending on the coffee, it might be a lot more acidic. If you're drinking hot coffee, that's one of the reasons cold brew and iced coffee is really great, because the acidity is quantifiably lower. And then breaking this down a little further, one of the best ways to go about a quick infusion of caffeine is espresso shots. Okay, people talk. I get so excited and so pumped, and I'm I'm standing in the middle of a circle, with a bunch of people looking at me like, why is this guy so pumped? And I'm so pumped trying to tell people, dude, espresso shots, man. Espresso shots. Use them. Because look, you can take 2 espresso shots. And, depending on the quantity of caffeine in those espresso shots, it's either, 60 or so, 60 to 85 or so milligrams. You could get anywhere from 120 to 160 milligrams of caffeine right away. right, without anything else to buffer it out, without extra liquid, without, having to drink a bunch of water because you're peeing out a bunch of other caffeine. It's quick acting. That's it. That's one of the best ways to infuse a bunch of caffeine into the system right away. If you like drinking caffeine, here's what you do. Here's the strategy. Take your 700 or 1,000 milligrams of Aniracetam. Okay, throw down 2 double shots, or correction, a double shot, 2 regular shots of espresso. So you get 120 to 160 milligrams of an infusion of caffeine right away. And then fill up a large cup of coffee and slowly sip your other 100 or so milligrams, totaling 260 or whatever, you're still below 300, over the ensuing 2 hours. Aniracetam's at least effect duration window, not really half-life because that's a lot longer, but the effect duration window that's sitting affecting you is maximally about 2 hours, right? It's powerful effect. You might still have some residual effects thereafter, but that real acute effect is going to be about 2 hours. So that's perfect. That's a perfect time frame in which you can just sort of slow sip your other coffee in the meantime to get that extra 100 milligrams of caffeine to really take you in the place where you're fully functional, super motivated, speed of processing as good as you can engage in that cerebral tasks that this stack has such a utility to facilitate. All right, now we said we would talk a little bit about the infusion of the amino acid L-theanine in this mix. Okay, so let me just make it clear in case I'm going too fast for people. The general takeaway is that Aniracetam is very stimulatory combined with caffeine. It's a good stacking strategy. You can stack 700 milligrams or 1,000 milligrams, really find your good sweet spot there. Or really for folks that have really identified this, whatever your sweet spot of Aniracetam is, with 100 to 300 milligrams of caffeine and get a profoundly stimulatory response. I mean, that's one of my, I'm 8.5 years in nootropics. I got stacks for decades. We just wrote the Racetam God Guide, which you guys got to get at livecortex.com. That breaks down everything with every Racetam and all stacks included. And there's 80 stacks in there. There's 80 plus stacks in there. So, and that's just that guide. We wrote the Smarter, Better, Faster digital guide also, which is an all-on, full-on everything nootropics protocol guide, digital book, and that thing has 80 plus, even more. So that's 160 stacks right there, and I'm sitting here going that there's a massive power in this small Aniracetam stack. I mean, it's just so powerful. Okay, so that's the general, stack. 700,000 milligrams Aniracetam, 100, 300 milligrams caffeine. Very stimulatory, very motivating, very speed of processing, very working memory inducing, and therefore drive you to action inducing stack. Now, for some people though, this is always the thing we like to bring in. The stimulatory nature of a lot of caffeine, and particularly in combination with Aniracetam, might put them in a place where their speed of processing is powerful and their brains are cranked up and they're wired in, but they're moving a little too quickly to actually get focus capacity to sit down and do the work. And in that case, the great balancer, the great modulator, the great regulator, the amino acid L-theanine is the great strategy to add in conjunction to this stack. People talk about caffeine and theanine as a stack. Theanine basically adds in this profound calm by affecting GABA and serotonin and alpha brainwave states that balances out, what one might think is an excessive sort of stimulatory effect from caffeine or otherwise stimulatory nootropics. I found over time that you could apply this theanine strategy with all manner of stimulatory stuff. It stacks well with oxiracetam, it stacks well with Alcar, it stacks well with uridine, it stacks well with pramiracetam, other stimulatory, it stacks well with modafinil, other stimulatory things, and you can use the strategy of infusing theanine to calm things down with very, very many other stimulatory things. So my suggestion, and the optional addition of this Aniracetam caffeine motivation speed of processing drive you to action stack, would be 200 to 400 milligrams of L-theanine. 200 to 400 milligrams of L-theanine. Again, this is an optional addition if you feel like the Aniracetam caffeine stack is too stimulatory and you cannot focus because it's too overpowering. Bring that caffeine in, or bring the theanine, and I think that for most folks you're going to find that is the solution to that issue if you run into that issue. And I get there sometimes. I really have to take a lot of caffeine, and I've got to take a lot of Aniracetam. Really, I got to crank up the caffeine to 400 milligrams in order for me to be like, okay, I'm way too stimulated. Now I require L-theanine to tone this down. But as long as I stay at 300 or below 300, I'm in the God zone. But if you get extra stimulated, bring in minimally bring in, minimally 200 and I'd say, max for most folks, at least as it relates to this particular stack. I mean, titrate accordingly, but max 400 milligrams. That's the theanine strategy there. Okay, that has been the podcast. Overall, I want to make the point to folks, look, this racetam caffeine protocol, this applies to most other racetams. I mean, it applies to colaracetam, it applies to pramiracetam, it applies to oxiracetam considerably, it applies to caffeine, or correction, to piracetam. Piracetam is one of the strategies with caffeine and theanine that I really suggest to college kids that hit me up. To take over a sustained period of time, 2-3 months, if they don't really want to cycle or they just can't because they need that extra brain performance. That's your best, safest route, right? It's super simple, it's super sustainable, it's going to be super predictably effective, and it's easy to put together. But many other, stacks apply with the notion of racetam caffeine. Okay, so just, moving forward in your nootropics experimentation, when you're taking racetams, just know if I want that extra set of stimulation in there, and I want to really tone up the power, the mental, the speed of processing, the drive you to action, the sort of motivated, stimulatory, powerful brain function in the mix, bring caffeine into that racetam combination, and you'll learn to love it like me. I'm just fully in love with racetam, caffeine combinations, and particularly this Aniracetam caffeine stack. All right, that has been the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check us out on iTunes if you're listening to this on YouTube. Just search around for the Cortex Nootropics podcast and find it. Also on livecortex.com/blog. In the menu bar where it says content, you should be able to scroll down to Cortex Nootropics podcast or podcast, and you'll have all our podcast episodes, laid out with the main points that we discuss on the podcast, like listed in bullet point, numbered list form. And then, maybe relevant links on some of the podcasts, depending on what we talk about, if we're referencing studies and these types of things. If you're listening to this on iTunes and you're not listening to this on the YouTube channel, go to our YouTube channel. We've got massive quantities of endless, continuous cranking out of videos relating to everything you can think of, to just videos about plain stacks, to philosophy around nootropics, to caveats around particular nootropics, to modafinil, caffeine, theanine protocols, to sublingual colaracetam protocols. Everything you can think of that is the Cortex Labs Nootropics and Smart Drugs channel on YouTube. Check us out on livecortex.com, where we've got an array of powerful nootropic products ranging from the Cortex Nootropic stack. That's our natural stack that we made out to mimic modafinil. Combines uridine and CDP choline and artichoke extract. A very, very powerful, godlike combination of nootropics. Natural nootropics, by the way, so it's not like you're taking racetams or any other drug. Not that any of that's bad, but some folks just sort of are comfortable going, hey, I've got a natural stack that really cranks up brain performance. Get it at livecortex.com. That's the Cortex Nootropic stack. And then two other major things relating to giving you massive quantities of lists and massive value of nootropic stacks that you could use today, or you could use ASAP, and you can use forever, frankly, to turn on very particular brain states. We've got the Smarter, Better, Faster Nootropics Protocol book. Okay, that's a digital guide. Download it for iPhone, iPad, Kindle, Android, whatever tablet you got, Windows Phone, PDF. Read it on your computer. Read it anywhere. That thing explains my stacks, my combination of stuff, my protocols that I've learned over 8.5 years of taking nootropics, the most surgical modafinil stacks there are. I mean, I figured out how to put modafinil together with a few things, and to really, really maximize its effects and to really prevent any side effects coming from it, even in excessive quantities. I mean, the Smarter, Better, Faster book gives you a breakdown of some of the most surgical protocols. The ANR micro protocol, that is a micro-dosing strategy of aniracetam that's exceptionally well tested on many people, that works on hundreds plus people. I mean, I've suggested this literally through email to hundreds plus people and get very, very positive results from it. That is in the Smarter, Better, Faster book. Stacks like the TAU Limitless stack, which has a base nootropic of triacetyluridine as its base, and that's got a bunch of other powerful ingredients to make such a synergistic stack. It's literally like the Eddie Moore Limitless stack. I mean, this thing is insane. That's why we hyperbolically call it the TAU Limitless stack. You'll take it and you're gonna go, all right, okay, I'm done with every other stack. I'm just gonna take the stack forever. The thing is powerful. Stacks like that in the Smarter, Better, Faster book. Get it at livecortex.com. Download it right away. Download it right now. Download it after this podcast. Get it done. But then, If racetams are your thing, if you're just strictly into racetams, and you know what, there's nothing wrong with that. I love racetam so much, it's insane. I'm so into coliracetam, especially that and fasiracetam. I just love them. And of course, pramiracetam, piracetam, oxiracetam, piracetam, just all of them. I love it. But we wrote a guide on it. It is called the Racetam God Guide. It breaks down 8 major popular nootropic racetams, the dose range, the explanation, the mechanism of action, the specific dose range, and then 2 major things which are incredibly important and really the takeaway value. Number 1, sublingual stacks with those racetams. Sublingual phenylpiracetam, sublingual coliracetam, sublingual fasiracetam, sublingual oxiracetam, right? Sublingual phenylpiracetam. I'm just going to emphasize the phenylpiracetam. And then it's got an entire other section on each sector. Sector is the way that we name chapters for highly effective regular oral nootropic stacks with that with that particular racetam. So we've got phenylpiracetam, Nupep, CDP, choline, and pacitine stacks. We've got phenylpiracetam, L-tyrosine, triacetyluridine stacks. We've got some of the most powerful racetam stacks, 80 plus racetam stacks, plus a breakdown of each racetam at the Racetam God Guide. Get it at livecortex.com. You can download that for any device also. Get it today. Rock on. Put it in your arsenal. Read it. Get better. No more stacks. Use them. Apply them for specific brain states and get better brain performance. And thank you so much for listening, guys. We will talk to you very soon. More podcasts being cranked out. More videos cranking out. God, hey, guess what? Sometime in the next 48 hours, probably a lot less than that, probably the next 10 hours, more content's going to come out. So stay alert, stay awake, and stay functional, my friends. We'll talk to you next time.